The Christmas Morning Massacre is a tragic and haunting case that shocked the nation. On December 25, 2008, a small town in Covina, California, became the setting for one of the deadliest family massacres in modern American history. A man dressed as Santa Claus carried out an attack on his former in-laws, turning a joyful holiday into a scene of horror. In this episode, we'll explore the details of the crime, the man behind the attack, and the devastating impact it had on the victims' families and the community. This is the story of the Christmas Morning Massacre. December 25, 2008, began like any other Christmas morning for the Ortega family. They were hosting their annual Christmas Eve party at their home in Covina, California, a quiet suburban neighborhood. Around 25 family members and friends were gathered, exchanging gifts, enjoying food, and celebrating the holiday. Shortly before midnight, the joyful atmosphere turned into chaos. A man dressed as Santa Claus knocked on the door, carrying a large wrapped gift. When the door was opened, the man, later identified as Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, pulled out a semi-automatic handgun and began firing indiscriminately at the partygoers. As screams filled the house, Pardo set fire to the home using a homemade flamethrower hidden inside the gift he brought. The blaze consumed the Ortega family's home, leaving nothing but ashes and heartbreak in its wake. By the time the flames were extinguished, 9 people were dead, and several others were seriously injured. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo was an unassuming man, at least on the surface. Born in 1963, Pardo was an aerospace engineer who seemed to lead a normal life. However, beneath his seemingly calm exterior, a darker side would eventually emerge. In the years leading up to the massacre, Pardo's life began to unravel. He was going through a bitter divorce from his wife, Sylvia Ortega Pardo, who was a member of the Ortega family. The divorce had been finalized just a week before Christmas, and Pardo had been ordered to pay significant alimony payments to Sylvia, which he resented deeply. Pardo's financial troubles and personal grievances fueled a growing sense of anger and despair. Friends and acquaintances later described him as a man who had become increasingly withdrawn and fixated on his perceived injustices. He began plotting his revenge against the Ortega family, blaming them for his failed marriage and financial woes. Pardo's plan wasn't impulsive, it was methodical. He purchased firearms, crafted a flamethrower, and even created a custom Santa Claus suit to disguise himself during the attack. It was clear that Pardo had been planning the massacre for weeks, if not months. At approximately 11:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, Bruce Pardo arrived at the Ortega family home. Dressed as Santa Claus and carrying his deadly arsenal, he knocked on the door. The sight of Santa likely brought a moment of surprise and joy to the family. As the door opened, Pardo immediately began shooting. His first victim was an 8-year-old girl who had come to greet him, suffering a gunshot wound to the face. Thankfully, she survived, but the violence continued. Pardo fired at anyone in his line of sight, showing no mercy. The party descended into chaos as family members scrambled to escape. Some hid under furniture, while others jumped from windows to flee the carnage. Amid the gunfire, Pardo deployed his flamethrower, setting the house ablaze. The flames quickly engulfed the home, trapping several victims inside. Firefighters arrived to find the house fully engulfed. By the time the fire was extinguished, the devastation was complete. 9 people, including Sylvia Pardo and her parents, had lost their lives. The fire had been so intense that identifying the victims required dental records. After the massacre, Bruce Pardo fled the scene. He had planned to escape to Canada, but his plans unraveled. Pardo was severely injured during the attack. The flames from his homemade flamethrower had caused second-degree burns. Hours later, Pardo was found dead at his brother's home in Sylmar, California, from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Next to his body, police found evidence of his meticulous planning, including maps and items that suggested he intended to harm more people. Investigators pieced together the motives behind the massacre. Pardo's divorce had left him angry and financially strained. He had harbored deep resentment toward the Ortega family, blaming them for his troubles. The Santa Claus suit, the weapons, and the flamethrower all pointed to a premeditated act of revenge. The attack shocked the tight-knit Covina community. Friends and neighbors of the Ortega family described them as loving, generous people who didn't deserve such a horrific fate. Vigils were held, and memorials were created to honor the victims and support the survivors. The Christmas Morning Massacre remains a chilling reminder of how unchecked rage and despair can lead to unimaginable tragedy. For the survivors, the wounds, both physical and emotional, will never fully heal. In the years since the attack, the case has sparked conversations about domestic violence, gun control, and mental health. While Bruce Pardo's actions were uniquely horrific, they highlight the devastating consequences of unresolved anger and a lack of support for those in crisis. The Ortega family has become a symbol of resilience. Despite their unimaginable loss, surviving members have worked to honor the memories of their loved ones and rebuild their lives. The massacre also served as a wake-up call for law enforcement and mental health professionals to better recognize the warning signs of potential violence. Pardo's behavior in the months leading up to the attack showed clear red flags, warnings that went unnoticed until it was too late. The Christmas Morning Massacre is a story of love and joy, shattered by an act of unspeakable violence. It's a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of compassion and understanding, especially during times of crisis. As we remember the victims, we also reflect on the lessons this tragedy has taught us about family, resilience, and the power of community. Thank you for joining me as we explored this somber chapter in true crime history. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth looks at history's most tragic and impactful events.